Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Boa noite. Obrigada a todo mundo pela participação. Obrigada principalmente, Kathy. Thank you very much, Kathy, por estar aqui oferecendo para vocês essa aula gratuita, essa oportunidade única de ter meia hora de dúvidas e perguntas sobre o ACT direto com uma das melhores professoras. A ideia é a gente fazer uma preparação para o ACT, o próximo que acontece, que é agora 9 e 10 de setembro. Antes da gente começar, a gente queria pedir para vocês responderem uma enquetezinha, um poll que a gente lançou, que vai aparecer aqui agora para vocês no Zoom, com algumas perguntas sobre o conhecimento que vocês têm da prova. Tá? Isso vai ajudar a Kathy a preparar um pouco o que ela vai falar. E, além disso, o que vocês tiverem de dúvida durante a apresentação, enfim, perguntas que vocês queiram fazer, é só vocês usarem o chat aqui do Zoom também, escreverem a pergunta ou levantarem a mão, que aí, quando a gente puder, a gente responde a pergunta ou chama vocês para falarem a pergunta diretamente ao vivo no Zoom. I think that covers the basics. So finally, again, thank you very much to students who are participating, but mainly to Kathy for giving us your valuable time and your incredible insight about the ACT.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for coming. I think that I will not have access to the poll results, it looks like, FYI. But that's okay. Do
you want me to tell you them?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, so, wait a minute, okay, so what section are you most concerned about? 50% said math, 25% said science, 25% said reading. Nobody said writing, which is good. Are you taking the next ACT on September 9th? 50% said yes, 50% said no. Have you taken any ACTs before? 75% no, this is their first one. 25% yes, they've taken one.
Okay, thank you.
But there are also more people joining and more people answering, but that's the kind of the general.
That's helpful. Thank you. And thank you to those who took the poll. I'm Kathy. I've been with Alma Mater Test Prep since 2014. I'm a tutor myself. I've been a tutor for 20 years, working on SAT, ACT, and other things. And then we have a handful of great tutors. Some of you are working with some of them, all of whom have lots of experience themselves. We tutor SAT, ACT, but also IB, AP, and I'm the tutor coordinator. So I'm the person you come to if you want to get set up with a tutor. Excuse me, losing my voice here. So I'm the person who can help you kind of get set up with whatever you need for all of your test prep needs and academic needs. And so what I wanted to focus on today are the tools that are on the digital ACT. As most of you must know, the ACT in the US is on paper, but internationally it's been digital for a few years now. So I wanted to take a look at some of those tools. I also know that lots of you, really every ACT student I've ever had has had some struggles with timing. So I want to talk about some general timing strategies on the sections. So we'll go through all 4 sections and just kind of talk through some of the things that might be helpful on each. And then I've got the Q&A up here, so feel free to reach out with any questions as we're going through things. So let me share this. Okay, so this right here is, so for those of you who haven't seen the test, ACT has exactly one practice computer-based test for us. They offer it in a timed format and an untimed format. What I've set up here is untimed, but on your actual test, oh no, it's timing actually. So no, I set it up timed. So you'll see up in the upper right corner there, you have the timer going. So something to be aware of. Don't let it stress you out as best you can. And so some tools that would be helpful on the English in particular, and actually this would go for the English, the reading, and the science, all three of those sections. So 3 out of the 4 sections, everything except for math, we're really going to want to use process of elimination. So, and how we're eliminating is going to depend on the section. But on the English, if I want to set things up so that I can just eliminate answers, I go up here to the tools and go down to answer eliminator. And I'm all set up here. And I'm going to be set up then for the entire section to eliminate. So what we're going to do generally on the English, so any of the sort of grammar, the questions kind of fall into 2 general categories on the English for those of you who haven't been preparing for the ACT extensively. We have grammar questions, kind of straight grammar questions. They might ask us about subject-verb agreement, punctuation, anything in the grammar realm. That's one category. And then we also have questions that are sort of more generally about the structure of the passage. They could also ask us about transitions from one sentence to another. So in the first category, the grammar category, when we're going through a question, we're going to want to just read through the full sentence and plug in each answer choice as we go through that full sentence. So each answer choice, you're going to read the full sentence with the answer choice plugged in. I'm not going to go through this exact question, but if I decide, okay, no change isn't working, I just click this X and get rid of it. Oh, I don't like B, I'm going to get rid of that, etc. So, and then if D is my answer, I go ahead and select that, and then I can hit next to move on to the next question, like so. I also have this ability to, let's say I'm not sure about a given question and I want to save it for later. I don't want to spend too much time because we're always concerned about time. Although I will say the first section, the English section, usually is less of a time crunch. But if I want to flag a question, I can go down to this button right in the bottom right-hand corner, hit flag. And then later, when I want to go back to questions I've flagged, I can hit this button up here, nav for navigate. That's between my previous and next buttons. I just hit that. And it shows me then the question that I flagged so that I know, okay, I want to go to number 2. That's one I flagged. I'm going to return to that. So generally, again, we're going to set up our answer eliminator tool and go through. Oh, I turned it off. Great. But you get the idea. Once it's set up, then I can use it on every question. And that's what I'm going to want to do on the English, the reading, and the science. So right away, go to your tools, set that up so you can use process of elimination. So I want to take a look at the math and talk about just some things. Actually, maybe we won't bother with the math, but I do want to talk about just some general timing things on the math because we only have 1 minute per question on the math. Not a lot of time at all. So the way that the math is structured, the first 10 minutes, or the first 20 questions of the 60 questions are going to be easier. And then the middle 20 are roughly medium level, and the last 20 are your hardest questions. So it really depends on what score you're shooting for, what your strategy is going to be exactly. For some students, if you're not shooting for one of those really top scores, maybe you're not that worried about the last 10 to 20 questions and you're making sure you're getting the first 40 questions right. So that might be one strategy. But generally, if you're answering all of the questions, what I would recommend is that you spend roughly 10 minutes on the first 20 questions, then about 15 minutes on the second set, about 20 minutes on the second set of 20, and then about 30 minutes on those hardest questions. So again, you're spending about 10 minutes on the first 20, about 20 minutes on questions 21 through 40, and then 30 minutes on those hardest questions. So that would be my general timing strategy for the math. Again, everyone is different, but that can be something to try when you're just trying a math section independently. Another thing I would do is just, again, as we talked about with the flag, I would flag questions as I go. Anything that I know I'm just spending too much time on, I'm going to go ahead and flag it so that I can plan to just do all the flagged questions at the end, so that I'm not spending too much time on any one question. So any questions so far on anything that we've talked about, feel free to type it in the Q&A. Gabriela can help with any questions in Portuguese.
That's what I was going to say. Gente, pode perguntar em português, tá? Se vocês preferirem.
Whatever you're comfortable with. So now getting on to the reading. So I'll pull up that just for optics, really, but we're not going to go through any specific questions right now on the reading. But I did want to talk about things that can be useful tools there, and also some timing strategies. So just get that set up for us. So on the reading, again, right away, I'm going to set up my answer eliminator in my tools. You'll also see tools like highlighter. That can be helpful. I just highlight things as I go. We also have this line reader. I'm not sure that's super helpful, but it's if you're the sort of person who, when you're reading, you use your finger to read, that can be helpful. Yeah, so what I would say is the highlighter tool can be effective. Answer eliminator, again. With highlighting, sometimes, I don't know, some of us are a little highlight happy and we might highlight everything. And if that helps you to read more quickly, that sounds good. But generally, I think with highlighting, it's good to highlight what you see as the main idea of each paragraph, which typically will be the topic sentences of the paragraphs, but not necessarily. You might also sort of highlight anything that stands out to you as relating particularly to the main idea. And then in general, the reading for most students is a time crunch. So what I would recommend, number one, is that you read the passages. Most students do have time to read the passages. Sometimes we think we can save time and just go straight to the questions, but then we're figuring out the passage as we go, and that's tough, and that eats up a lot of time. So what I would recommend is that you read the passage. Most students can read a passage in 4 minutes or less. So that's what I would push myself to do. See if I can read at least most of the passage in 4 minutes and spend about 5 minutes on the 10 questions they give me. So that would be a general strategy to try first. Everyone is going to be different. But that would be generally how I would approach timing. See if I can read the passage in 4 minutes, and then see if I can do the questions for that passage in 5 minutes. And then generally on the questions, I'm going to offer a strategy for the questions that's going to sound like it's going to take more time, but I promise you it takes less time. You want to answer questions in your own words first, and then go through eliminating. So process of elimination is the theme. But on this section, as opposed to the English section where we're kind of going right to the choices, at least on the grammar questions, this section, I want to come in armed with my own answer first, and then go through eliminating. The reason I want to do that is they're trying to trick me with the answer choices. So I want to avoid that by having my own answer in mind. And the way that it actually saves me time, even though it won't feel this way, is that when you go straight to the choices, you're basically answering 4 different questions rather than answering just one. Because by going to the to the answer choices right away, you have to ask yourself, well, was it a young boy with a passion for opera? Let me think about that. Or was it the daughter of an extremely busy father? I'm not sure. So you have to go through each one like that. But if you have your own answer, it's very obvious what is not right. And you just cross off 3 out of the 4 and you have your answer. You're also much more likely, again, you're more likely to not be tricked by the tricky answers. Someone did ask a specific question about dual passages on the reading, and I wanted to address that. So what I would say is that usually what we want to do on the dual passages is still devote 4 total minutes to the reading of those passages. But what I would do is spend 2 minutes reading the first passage, then go to the questions that pertain to just that passage, and then read the second passage and answer all the questions pertaining to the second passage and all of the questions asking us to compare the passages. So that would be my general strategy there. 2 minutes for the first passage, I read through that. Then I answer all the questions pertaining to the first passage. I go back and read the second passage, and then I answer all the questions that are left over. Any questions? Very shy here.
So just so everyone knows, I've allowed everyone to unmute and ask questions, tá? Então não fiquem com vergonha, vários de vocês já conhecem a Kathy, inclusive. Podem tirar do mute e fazer suas perguntas. I think we have
Okay.
one.
Oh, great. Okay. Do I think the math is harder on the ACT? That's a good question. Thank you, Fernanda. So yes and no. So the topics are definitely get more advanced on the ACT. We see things on the ACT that we do not see on the SAT, like hyperbolas, matrices, sort of more advanced topics. But I think that the questions are less tricky. So, on the SAT, you have to kind of come up with a creative way to get to the answer in a way that you don't on the ACT. The other thing that's trickier about the ACT versus the SAT is just that we don't have as much time per question. So on the SAT math, we have about 1.5 minutes per question. On ACT, we have only 1 minute. So that's a difference. But again, it's more straightforward. So it depends a little bit on the student. It depends on your preference. And that's why we always have students try an ACT diagnostic and an SAT diagnostic just to see which one is a better fit. Good question. Any other questions so far? Oh,
there's one more.
Yes. So we will, Sarah, do you mean the natural science passage on the reading? Okay. Yes. So I think that the general tips I gave definitely apply to the natural science passage and all of the passages. I think that what can be intimidating about the natural science passage on the reading is the jargon. There's this technical language, and that can be alarming. What I would say is we want to focus on what we do know versus on what we don't know. So you want to try to just get the gist of what the passage is talking about. You want to get the general idea. And once you have the general main idea, all of your answers should be lining up with that main idea. So with every question, not every question, detailed questions, maybe not, but most of the questions are going to line up with a particular main idea. So as long as you can kind of work around the stuff that's intimidating, that you don't understand, you can get the main idea, and then that's going to help you answer the questions. So I hope that answers it well enough there. And then we have another question. Yes, so the ACT is timed per section. Yes. So you've got 45 minutes for the first section, 60 minutes for the second section, the math. Then you have 35 minutes for the reading and the science each. If you have some kind of accommodation, like you get extended time, then that's different, but that's generally how it works. Yes, and you cannot go on to the next section until time is up, unless you're taking a practice test at home, of course, and you do it how you want. But yes, you will not be able to move on to the next section until time is up on that section. Let me just pull up.
Kathy, I have a kind of a non-subject specific question, but a general testing question.
Sure.
Which is kind of valid also for the SAT. So do you have any key advice for the kind of the psychological and emotional preparation for test day? What would be your your trick to
Right. Yeah. So, it depends on the person, definitely. What I would say about test anxiety, which a lot of us experience, myself included, is you just want to be as prepared as possible. So you want to take lots of practice tests. You want to simulate the environment of the test as much as possible. So if you're taking it at home, you want to wake up at the time that you're going to be taking that test. You want to wake up on Saturday morning and take the test, make yourself do it. Gabby just had that question about, can I move on to the next section? Maybe you make it so that you have to sit there for that amount of time. That morning before you start the test, you have the breakfast you plan to eat, you do everything the way that you're thinking you're going to do it on test day. So that would be one thing. Another is that the more you have specific strategies laid out for yourself, either through the help of a tutor or things that you have figured out on your own via practice, the more you can go through the test like a machine. So I'm really emphasizing process of elimination. Something about that also makes the test more physical for you, which helps you with your nerves. So you're going through and you're crossing things off, and that just gets some of that nervous energy out. And if you can just say to yourself when you're nervous, well, how have I tackled these questions when I've practiced at home? What is the way that I do it? Okay, I answer this question in my own words and I go through eliminating. And you just sort of take yourself out of the equation as much as possible and just become a machine. That's my general recommendation for overcoming test anxiety. So I hope that answers that. And then let me just get to the science here. So the science, we always have 6 to 7 passages. Most of the passages, so the science is kind of like a reading question, but my recommendation is going to be slightly different on this section than it is on the reading. What I would say is some students will benefit and will be able to do this within the time. Some students can read the full passage and go to the questions. Most students are going to do well to just go straight to the questions on almost all of the science passages, any that have graphs and tables like this one. So most students, again, can go right to the questions without reading. However, I would not recommend that on the sort of fighting scientists passage where it's really just pure reading. So those passages where you're looking at different perspectives and that don't have any tables or graphs, you'll know it when you see it. Those you really do have to read. However, you can size up pretty quickly as you read through the different perspectives, sort of the outline of each scientist's or student's argument. So you want to size up that outline as you go so that you can quickly say, oh, here are the ways that these two scientists differ. And here are the ways that scientist 2 and scientist 3 are similar but different. So you want to size that up before you go to the questions. But in any case, generally speaking, outside of the fighting scientists, we can go straight to the questions unless you're someone who can read through everything quickly and go through the questions quickly. So you have to try both ways. You have to figure out what works for you. Here too, on the science, I would answer questions in my own words, just as you would on the reading, and then go through eliminating. So again, you go to your tools, answer eliminator, and you're going to eliminate choices as you go. So come up with your own answer and eliminate choices. So that's sort of my general strategy for working through the science. It's always, it's a time crunch for most students. But again, see if you can do well just by going straight to the questions. If you can't, then see if by reading everything you can, maybe you spend more time on that, but you can get through the questions more quickly. It depends. So I would try both methods and see what works for you. So those are kind of my general ideas for using the tools and for navigating the timing in each section. Again, flag anything you're not sure of. You can go to navigate and see what it is you need to look at. So any questions, any more questions?
I think we have time for one more. So if anyone wants to ask the last question. I think it sounds like everyone's ready for the test.
Sounds like it. Great.
It sounds like the lesson was completely successful.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming and for your questions, all of which were great. And yeah, we're here if you need us.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Okay, we have someone. Pedro,
yes.
You want to type? Pode tirar o microfone, pode.
So I'll just ask my question verbally.
Sure.
So when talking about the reading and going through it, are there any techniques that we could keep in mind to, well, as you said, answer the questions in our own words so that we're not caught up with the options? Are there any techniques at all?
Well, so that would be a technique. Yeah, answering in your own words. What do you mean generally? Like just how to read through the passage, or?
I mean, for me, just thinking about, well, let's answer this with my own words. That doesn't really help me in that sense, because we still have to identify which of the 4 options is in the text, right? So
yeah. So what I mean by that is, yes. So what I would say is you're gonna have to look back in the text a lot of the time to answer a question in your own words, unless you remember it. And hopefully in reading the text, you've kind of identified for yourself, okay, this information is in the 2nd paragraph and this information is in the 3rd. So you've kind of narrowed down for yourself where you need to look to find the answer. So you go back into the text, you find that answer, and you paraphrase it for yourself so that you're sure you really understand it and you have your own answer in mind. Then when you go to the choices, you're going to be able to say to yourself, well, this isn't the same as what I came up with, so I'm going to cross it off. And you might narrow down to 2 that are kind of similar to what you came up with. And what I would urge you to do is really to find what's wrong still with one of those choices. So rather than saying, oh, this one looks nice, you want to be a little tougher on the test and a little tougher on the answer choices and say, well, here's this one part of it that is not accurate based on what I read and what my own answer is. Does that answer it a little better for you, Pedro?
Yeah, thanks. That pretty much answers it. I guess you'd say we should always read the question first and still not read the answers, go through the passage and then identify where we should look at, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily, Some students will benefit from reading the questions before reading the passage, but especially given the digital format, you're going to have to kind of click through the questions to see them, and that's going to take time. So what I would recommend is that you just read the passage first before you look at the questions. If it were a paper-based test, then it would be, maybe that would be effective. It would depend on the person. But what I'm suggesting is the idea of the passage. And then when you get to a question, you want to try to answer it in your own words. If you can't do it just from memory, you're going to go back into the passage, find the answer, and then go to your choices and eliminate anything that doesn't match up with what you came up with. And the idea is that you're kind of armed with your own response. So you're not getting tripped up by things that are totally intended to trip you up, because they kind of sound like things from the passage, but they're not actually answering the question.
Yeah, understood. Thanks.
Great question, Pedro. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. I think I'm going to switch into Portuguese. Obrigada a todo mundo. Chegamos ao final da nossa aula, do nosso Masterclass com a Kathy. Se vocês tiverem alguma dúvida, mais alguma dúvida, quiserem falar de estratégia de application ou aula de SAT ou ACT, mandem um e-mail para a gente ou um WhatsApp para os nossos contatos, que vão aparecer, se não aparecerem aqui no final, vocês vão receber depois por e-mail também. Boa sorte para todos vocês que vão fazer a prova de setembro e todas as próximas provas. So good luck to everyone, I'm just saying, for the upcoming tests.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you very much to everyone. Thank you especially to Kathy for your time and your great insights to the test.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions, and good luck if you're taking it in September or beyond. And
yes, so good luck to everyone. Thank you very much. Good evening. Bye.
Bye.